Welcome back to the podcast. We are deep in the throes of a brand new school year, and with that comes a lot of new things, new challenges for parents and teenagers. And I'm going to be talking about just that on today's episode. I love this time of year. I love beginnings. I love fall. I love cozy sweaters. You can see I've got my sweater on here. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you may be wondering what I'm talking about. But if you weren't aware, I have a YouTube channel. If you're watching me on YouTube, hello. If you're not and you would like to watch this episode live, head over to my YouTube channel. I will put a link in the episode show notes so you can check it out, so you can subscribe, and you can get your weekly podcast in video format. So this week I'm going to be talking specifically about the teenagers who have just transitioned into college. So they have gotten into the new school year, or perhaps you just dropped them off, you're getting ready to, and it's a really exciting time for everyone. But one thing I know for sure is that, and I've seen it over and over with my clients, the teenagers, the college students that I work with, they get into the school year, they're super excited, they're super pumped, they reached their goal to getting into a school. It's so fun and new, they're on top of things. And then as time passes, the wheels begin to fall off of the bus. It becomes more challenging. More things come up. There's just a lot more to think about and some concerns that could arise. And that's what I'm going to be sharing in this episode. And really just knowing these things in advance can help you support them when they do happen, but it also normalizes that this is just something that can happen. And I've worked with many college students in the past. I have some college students right now, and they've struggled, all of them, with every single one of these. I've had clients that have struggled with all of these. And over time, as I've seen them grow, they overcame them. They figured it out. We figured out solutions that would work for them. Some of them have gone on already to graduate and have started their careers, which is so fun to see. But just know that these are just typical challenges that college students, especially freshmen, can face. And if you have a college student, a freshman, you can have them on your radar and know how to support them when they come up. So I'm going to be listing 7 common challenges that college freshmen face, and then I'm going to give a solution for each one. So this is for you to listen. You can also share it with your college freshmen if they come to you and they're talking about struggling with any of these things. So let me go ahead and dive in. Struggle number 1. This is the number one thing that the college students I work with struggle with, and that is anxiety. Everything is new. There's big changes, and that's very exciting. But that can also lead to overwhelm and self-doubt. Just wondering, can I handle all of this? This isn't what I expected. And it leads to overthinking and just wondering, what if I can handle this? Like, that's the main thing. Can I handle this? I'm actually working with a college student right now who was having panic attacks, just kind of out of the blue, never really struggled with panic attacks in the past, hadn't been a thing that they really had dealt with. And we had our first session. I shared some strategies with them. And a week later, they told me that they didn't have one panic attack all week. They used the strategies that we talked about, and it worked for them. And of course, we're going to continue to meet and just reinforce these habits. I'm going to share with them a lot of new tools, but this is just a really common thing. So the solution, to get onto the solution, is to find a system that works for them. Managing their time, managing their energy, managing their well-being, staying on top of this so that they don't spiral into overwhelm, save things for the last minute, and then not potentially get things done. Another really important thing is to stay socially connected. Something that I know has happened with a couple of my college clients is that when they're in this state of anxiety, they start to withdraw and spend more time in their dorm room because they just don't have the energy to go out and connect with people. And that leads to really bigger feelings of social isolation. And it really further ingrains the self-doubt and the overwhelm that they may be feeling. So, finding time to make friends, connect with people, and socialize, and be patient with this process. Being patient of finding new friends and finding people to connect with. One thing that I typically will recommend to the college freshmen I work with is to find a temporary friend, somebody who checks the boxes of being okay to hang out with, but maybe not eventually going to be a best friend, not going to be super close, but it keeps you from feeling so alone and feeling so isolated. So finding a temporary friend, being patient, being willing to hang out with people who aren't exactly right for you. Also, to hang out in populated areas. So that might be the food court or the library, a coffee shop. In the dorm commons is a really great place for freshmen to hang out. Just studying in there or reading a book in there or just being visible so that potentially there could be a connection with people around. Also, connecting with professors and mentors on campus can really help to keep your teenager from feeling so isolated and feeling so alone. And that can be a really big challenge too. And this anxiety, it comes from the thoughts that they're having about themselves and about their ability to handle what they're going through. So, with all of this newness, and this is a thread that you'll find through all of the challenges that I talk about, these challenges all come from this transition, from things being new or different, or having different friends, or having different classes, having a different schedule, living in a different place. All comes from this being shaken up and being thrown into this new situation. So any way that you can find, your team can find to help them feel more grounded and more connected in their community will help with that. And to go back to the anxiety, that comes from the thoughts being perpetuated and feeding into one another. So if your college freshman tends to be an overthinker or a perfectionist, this can really spike, especially now as they start to get into this new school year and this new environment. So just normalize that. And when you're talking with them, normalize that it makes sense that they would feel this way. And of course, find support, someone to talk to. Whether it's a coach, an on-site counselor, schools have wellness centers, counseling centers, reaching out to that, finding support groups, maybe someone off-site, but somebody to talk things through with, and sort things in their mind out so that they don't get into that spiral of thinking and worrying over and over and over. And the next one is actually something that anxiety can lead to if it's not addressed, and that is depression. And it's really a perpetuation thing. So the overthinking, the self-doubt, and even if your teenager never struggled with depression before, it could be something that comes up for the first time in a college freshman year. Just feeling like things aren't going to get better, or I made a mistake, or I don't fit in, or I don't measure up. There's just a lot of self-doubt that can come from that. And that can lead to really low feelings, some really lack of motivation and lack of an interest in doing schoolwork. And it can lead to more evidence that can further perpetuate this problem and this cycle of depression. So just as I mentioned with anxiety, finding outside support in a counselor, the wellness center, just finding someone that they can talk to sort out how they're feeling and find solutions or strategies to help manage the feelings that they're having. And it can also, when talking with somebody, to find strategies to feel more connected with the people around them. I've worked with college students who just felt like they didn't connect with the people socially who were at their school. And it just kept, they felt like they kept trying and they kept trying and they weren't getting any results and nobody was inviting them places. And they just really got into a dark pit, just thinking that things weren't going to get better. So just being able to talk with someone about it and normalize that this is actually pretty common among college students can help them realize that they're not alone and that there's nothing wrong with them here. This is just a challenge they're going through. So finding support for that. And another thing that comes up with pretty much all freshmen is homesickness. If your college freshman doesn't struggle with homesickness, that's great. But obviously, moving to a new place can lead to, gosh, I miss my home. I miss my friends. I miss my family. I miss my bedroom, my pets. And it can feel really sad. And even if they're appreciating the newfound freedom and their new school, even if they like their classes, they may really miss home. And that's normal. So, a solution for that is to just have regular contact with home. And I want to advise on this not to overdo it. So, scheduling perhaps a weekly check in call, keeping it minimum so that they can still integrate. So, what can happen sometimes is because they're homesick, they want to connect with home more often, perhaps visit home more often if they're close enough and it's easy enough. And they're missing out on opportunities to meet new people and to integrate and really start to feel more comfortable in their new surroundings. So, yes, definitely create that stability in a weekly call or some type of connection that they can depend on for them. But something else that can really help with homesickness is being able to connect with the environment that they're in. And that could mean joining clubs, joining groups, finding campus communities, maybe intramural sports, trying something new, going on a day outing with the freshmen. I know freshman dorms often have opportunities where the residents can go somewhere together, like have a day out, and they can sign up for those types of things. It does require stepping out of your comfort zone, but it's an essential part of starting to get acclimated into your new environment. So you're really providing that stability. Hey, we're not going anywhere. And you're also encouraging them, go ahead and step out of your comfort zone. Do something that you maybe hadn't thought about doing before. Talk to somebody that maybe you hadn't considered connecting with before so that you can feel less alone where you are. And again, of course, just normalize. This is normal. This is a normal part of your adjustment to going to college, and it will pass. And it will likely come up again. If it didn't in the fall, it will likely come up again after the winter break as they transition into the second part of the school year, second semester or middle trimester or third trimester, depending on what system they're in. Number 4 is a big one, and that is roommate issues. Most college freshmen are going into school having never lived with a stranger in the same room before. Some of them, many of them, never even have had a roommate before. And especially if they're an only child, they may have never actually had to share a space with someone before. So this can be a big adjustment, and it can be really challenging. Of course, there's those stories where the roommates become best friends, and then, years and years later, they're at each other's weddings and etc. But a lot of the times that's not the case. Maybe, if anything, it's just you cohabitate, you get along, you don't have to be best friends, but sometimes there's conflicts too. And so if this comes up for your teenager, they're struggling with their roommate, the solution can be to work through the issues that come up as they arise instead of waiting until something happens to push them over the edge. So let's say, for example, there's just a difference in lifestyle. One person likes to stay up late, the other person doesn't. I know they have these surveys that they fill out, so potentially those types of situations can be avoided, but there's still living preferences. And you never know when you see someone's form, maybe they want to be organized, but it turns out they're not, and their clothes are all over the room and it's driving you crazy. Having the conversation as it occurs instead of waiting until, gosh, they've been throwing their clothes on the floor for months and it's driving me crazy, and now they're doing this other thing, and then there's a blow up, and then that can lead to more problems down the road. So teaching your teenager or learning how to have conversations that can be a little bit uncomfortable, but where you're coming to creative problem solving so that everybody's needs are getting met along the way is essential. And also having a productive solution where everybody's getting something out of it. So it's not just yelling and one-sided and one person always gets their way and the other person doesn't. It's really conflict resolution can come in handy here. And also at the very beginning, setting up expectations. This is what really works for me. This is what really works for you. How can we make sure we can cohabitate so that everyone is getting what they need? So setting up the expectations at the beginning before things start falling off the rails, or before, the niceness kind of goes away and the realness can come in. And also things like having conversations about guests coming over, sleep schedules, how I like to study. When you have conversations with somebody on the phone, is it okay to do it in the room while I'm reading a book? Those types of things, just it sets them up for success. So having those conversations in advance. But I also highly recommend getting in touch with the resident advisor if things aren't really being resolved. And the sooner and more proactively you can do that, the better, so that it doesn't spiral and become a bigger issue. That's what the resident advisor is there for, to help with these things. Because the goal is to have these two people in the room together all year. And if there's conflict in that process, it's going to disrupt the system. And they want to avoid it. So they have people there who are trained with these things, reaching out to the advisor and talking with them, asking their advice before it becomes a bigger issue. Okay, so the next one is sleep. With this newfound freedom, it's fantastic. And one of the number one things that can be put aside is sleep. And I've worked with many college students where they just feel so exhausted and they don't really know why. It's because, as they say, they're burning the candle at both ends. They've got their schoolwork that's stressing them out. They're really staying on top of it. They're doing their best there. They've got this social life and there's demands there, especially if they're part of a club or a sorority or a fraternity. It's taking a lot of their energy, and their sleep may suffer as a result because they haven't really set up healthy sleep habits potentially before they come to school, or they've never really had to because their schedule has been so structured up until now. So that can really take a toll. So when it comes to sleep, the simple and best solution is to stick with a sleep schedule as much as possible. And that means going to bed at a specific time and waking up at a specific time. The challenge with that, of course, is that college schedules vary, and there may be an early class one day, there may be a late class one day, there may be a meeting with some organization that they're in that disrupts that. I plan to go to bed at this time. Of course, there's going to be outliers, or there's going to be events that disrupt that routine, but to at least have a plan for it and prioritize it. And I was going to bring this up later, but I think it could really apply here, is to have what are known as the big rocks, or the most important things. Sleep is a big part of mental health and physical health. It's also going to be a big part of your academic success and your ability to make friends and socialize and really just enjoy your experience. If you aren't getting good sleep, all of those things are going to suffer. So having a good sleep schedule is a number one priority. And then sticking to it. At least 8 hours of sleep per night, minimum, if at all possible. And then, of course, managing where you're spending the other time. So if you're out late partying, of course, that's going to take a toll on your sleep. So cutting down on that as much as possible while still staying socially active. So it all comes from balance, finding balance, and making space for the things that are most important. And kind of along the same lines of sleep is staying healthy. Again, all of those structures and systems that were in place as they were growing up are no longer there. So they're not able to rely on those systems of, I was in school during these hours and then I did these things after school. I ate dinner and I did these things and then I went to bed. The routine's all thrown up in the air. And as such, so can be prioritizing eating healthy foods, prioritizing getting good exercise, getting good sleep. And there can be more susceptibility to illness as a result, of course. So the solution there, again, is to prioritize the big rocks. So sleep and physical wellness can all kind of go into that same bucket of prioritizing the big rocks. Eating healthy food, which can be challenging, especially if they only have limited options. Maybe there's only fast food on campus close by. Maybe that's the only thing they can afford on a college budget. Or maybe the dorm foods aren't particularly healthy. I know when I was in college, I would have French fries for pretty much every meal because it was there and I liked fries. So I was going to eat them at every meal. And of course, that's going to take a toll on the health. I know that many schools are integrating a lot more healthy options like a salad bar and vegetables and variety. So if your freshman goes to a college with food like that, of course, it's easier to access. But if not, it may require a little more creative problem solving on their part. So, really, just prioritizing I'm going to eat healthy foods and get more exercise. And when I say more exercise, I don't mean it has to be a 5-mile run, especially if your teenager was an athlete and did a lot of exercise in high school and maybe isn't playing their sport anymore. They may think exercise has to mean like I'm spending an hour in the gym or I'm going for a long run, but it doesn't have to mean that. It can just mean movement, getting more steps in during the day, potentially going to the fitness center and lifting weights, but finding ways to fit more movement into their schedule. Sounds easy to do, but it's also so important for physical and mental well-being. Okay, the next one is time management. This is number 7. If your teenager, if your freshman can manage their time, all of these other things will fall into place a little more easily. So if they know how to manage their time, if you're listening to this and you have a senior or a junior and you still have time where they're under your roof and you're able to help them figure out how to manage their time, do it. If not, don't worry about it. Don't panic. There's obviously systems out there that will help, but the more they can manage their time, the better able they're going to be able to address everything else I talked about. They're going to have less anxiety. It's going to lead to less depression. They'll get better sleep. They'll potentially feel more connected because they'll be able to have time for friendships, right? All of this feeds into time management. It's like a number 1 priority. Obviously, there are planners out there, digital and physical, finding one that works for your teenager so they can really put those big rocks in. But finding people on campus who can help them with that too. So if they're in a position where they're thinking, gosh, I really don't know how to budget my time. I don't know how to fit in all of these assignments. I don't know how to keep track of everything. There's resources. Your teenager doesn't have to figure it out on their own. So guide them to finding resources on campus to help them with these things. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the episode and throughout this episode, I work with college students on this. And if you have a college student who is, whether they're a freshman or not, struggling with any of the above, reach out to me. Let's have a conversation. Let's see if coaching might be a good fit for them, especially if they are letting you know that they're interested in getting support for it. I'm happy to help. So definitely schedule a consultation, reach out, and we'll see if it's a good fit and get some support for your teenager when they're really needing it. And of course, I want to close out by just thanking you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community. I feel a connection with you, even though you're not sitting across from me. I feel you here when I'm talking, even though I'm talking to a camera. You are my people. You are raising a teenager at some point, young, middle, young adult. It's a really tough time. And it would be so great if you could rate, review, subscribe to this podcast, share it with your friends, get it in the hands of more people, because this is a really tough time of parenting. Let's face it, there's a lot of ups and downs. We're going from the very beginning when they're trying to make friends and going through middle school through all the way through early adulthood, as where you are right now when your teenager is an adult living on their own and navigating their college freshman year. So share with your friends. And I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. And let's connect. Find me on Instagram. Community is everything when it comes to parenting. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time.